Delta Force is finally here on console, meaning you can now play on a controller whether you're on Xbox, PS5, or even on PC. As a Delta Force partner, I've had exclusive access to the latest closed builds of the console version of the game, meaning I've been able to spend the last couple of weeks extensively testing and refining the best controller settings out there, and you'll be able to use these no matter which platform you're playing on. So without further ado, let's jump straight into it. To get to your settings from the main menu, just hit the Start button. That'll bring up this page here, and then just hit the right bumper to go across to controller. You can see we've also got screen, graphics, audio, and the rest of it up here, but we're just going to be focused on controller settings for this video. In here, we've got a few different tabs to go through. There's a lot in here, but we don't have to change everything. I'll just run through the important ones and give a little detail on what they do and what I recommend having them set to. Your first ones here are all to do with dead zone. This is basically the amount of input you need to put into a stick before it starts doing something in the game. Generally for these two dead zone settings, you want to have them fairly low, but if you're getting stick drift when you're not pushing your sticks, then you want to push them up a bit. So if you've got a rubbish old controller like I do, you might need them a little bit higher, but if you've got a nice new controller that doesn't drift, you can probably bring these down to 5 or less, and then your inputs are going to be read a little bit more quickly. As for the maximum input, this is basically how far you have to push the sticks in order for it to hit the maximum input in game. So with 100, I need to push my sticks all the way before it registers that as a maximum push, but if you put it down to 50, you'd only have to push the stick halfway to register that. So technically it's going to make your inputs more responsive and quicker if you bring that down, but you'll have less finesse and control over it. So personally, I would just leave that on 100, but you may like to have that turned up a bit. Now down to the main ones, this is input sensitivity. So I've just got my stick response curve set to standard. There's also options for linear and dynamic. I think standard is fine, but it's just personal preference. As for sensitivity preset, what I'd recommend here is initially setting this to high and then changing that to custom, and that's going to give you a good base on which you can make some changes. Obviously, sens is subjective. Some people like running low, some people like running high, but these are the ones that I've been testing out and I think work quite well. So once you've gone for high and then custom, set your hipfire horizontal sens to 400 and your hipfire vertical sens to 280. This is basically your sens when you're just looking around with free look. This is your normal view you're going to be in most of the time. This keeps it quite responsive and high while still being relatively under control. The vert is a bit lower than the horizontal because if you have them equal, it just feels very weird when you look up and you suddenly look up very quickly. Generally, you're going to be making big, long looks left and right, but when you look up and down, they're normally only going to be by a small amount. So that's why you have that one a little bit lower. Hipfire Deadzone Acceleration, I've got that 80 for horizontal and 60 for vertical. Again, as before, this is the dead zone, so the amount of input you have to put into the stick. Hipfire activation time and turn delay. This is basically related to how long it waits before the aim acceleration starts hitting in when you're turning. So that aim acceleration is when you push the stick and you'll move at a set rate for a time. And then when aim acceleration kicks in, your camera will suddenly start moving more and more quickly, and that's aim acceleration. And by making that number higher, that means you're gonna have to push the stick further before that kicks in. And then this delay underneath is similar, but it's time-based, so it's gonna wait a short amount of time before it kicks that in. I've got this set quite low because when you're looking around in hipfire free view, I wanna be looking quite quickly, and I find having a bit of aim acceleration there is useful. If you don't want to have that, you can move this all the way up to 100 and you can put on some delay as well. We don't seem to have an option for just turning off aim acceleration completely at the moment, but you can adjust the rate at which it kicks in. ADS horizontal sens, I've got at 120, and then vertical sens, I've got at 80. So this is when you're looking down sights. That's your base sensitivity for that. But we can then finesse that with some of the settings down below. Again, we've got aim acceleration dead zone settings. I've got both of those set on 20. ADS turning activation time and delay. Again, this is the same as hipfire like we talked about here. I've got the activation time a little bit higher for my ADS because I don't want it to be jumping around with aim acceleration as much as it does when hip firing. So that's on 50. So that's half the stick input. And then I've also got a small delay of 30 on the turn delay here. You can then change this setting if you want. So this is set sens per zoom. You can have it off like this, and then it will just keep a uniform send across all of your different zoom levels from red dot all the way up to 12x. Or if you select it, you can change them all manually. They can go up very, very high, and then the sends is just insane. This is also tied into your other ADS settings here. So this changing this ADS horizontal and vert will also affect these. So those two are related. But what I've done is I've set my 1 to 2x and my 2 to 3x at 1.5, my 3 to 4 at 1.2, and then my 4 to 5 at 1. And then the others all the way from 5 to high I've got at 0.8 as well. I found anything higher than those just felt a bit too wild and hard to control for me on a controller. Next up, we got sensitivity transition mode. So this is basically at what point your camera transitions between the sends for your hip fire and the sends for your ADS. So if I'm aiming in down my scope from standing, when I'm in that hip fire view, I'm going to have very fast sends. And then as I go into the scope view, I'm going to have much lower sends. And this is dictating the point at which it changes, which can be quite critical because your ADS time can be quite slow in this game, depending on your gun loadout, and it can make this quite noticeable. ADS transition means it kind of just fades between the two as you go through the ADS transition, but you can also set it to toggle at the start and the end, so that would make it instantly go to the scoped in ADS when you start going into that zoomed level, or you can make it so it waits till you're fully scoped in and then it will go to that. I found those both felt quite weird to me, so I just left it on ADS transition. If you have a quick ADS gun, then you won't really notice that too much. Vertical input, just ignore, that's personal preference. I play Vert Y. Most people don't, but there's the setting for it if you need to change it. And then there's also settings for controller vibration and triggers, etc. if you want to turn those off. These settings here are for Warfare mode. I haven't changed them from default. I don't really play the Warfare mode, so you may want to tweak those a little bit. That's just relating to using ground vehicles and aircraft and gunner seats in the Warfare mode of the game. There's also an option for your aim assist down here. You can turn that on or off. You probably want to have it on, but if you prefer playing with no aim assist and you want to give that a go, then that is where the setting is for that. Over on the other tabs, there's not as much we need to worry about, but there is one critical setting I'd really recommend changing. What you're going to want to do is go to Auto Run Tactical Sprint here under Movement. If we change this to default, you're going to see that's going to be set to Auto Run. We want to change this to Close. So what that means is when you push the left stick, if you push it a small way, you're just going to move very slowly. If you push it a bit more, you move a bit more quickly. And if you push it all the way, you'll run, and then you'll click in or press whatever button you've bound and you'll sprint. If you have this set to auto run, then whenever you push the stick at all, you'll just start running really fast, and that just won't work, especially in operations when you're trying to be stealthy and hide your footsteps. So let's set that to close. There's also settings where you press to slide or dive. That's an ability only for D-Wolf, and you can change that there. I've just got that press to slide, or you can change that to a few other settings as well. Further down here is where you can change your ADS between hold and toggle. I play with hold. Again, it's just preference. Auto hold breath is up to you. I have that turned on at the moment. Lean peak is an interesting one. I've tried playing that with toggle and hold. I think I prefer playing with toggle in this. In other games, I've tended to use hold, but toggle just felt a bit more natural to me. You can also actually set auto lean peak. I've tried playing around with this. Sometimes it's quite handy. That just means when you peek when you're next to something, it's going to automatically peek around that. But occasionally it will start peeking around something that you maybe didn't want to peek around, and it can kind of throw you off. So I'd play around with that and see how you find it, but it is off by default. And then the rest of the settings here are just for changing key bindings. It's pretty thorough on what you can do. You can see all of that here. You can change all of your buttons that you want to do. All I've changed for the time being is that I changed my peak. So if you came from a PUBG background like me, I play with the default controls, then I change it so my left lean peak and right lean peak here, rather than being the two bumpers, which is default, I changed them to be clicking in the left and right sticks, which is the same as PUBG console default, basically. Or you could change those to be paddles on your controller if you play like that. Keep in mind that if you set the peak controls here under controls on combat, this is just for when you're moving around normally. So if I change this to be clicking in the sticks here, as well as that conflicting with my sprint, you know, my run fast, my swim or whatever, that's also going to set those independently to this. So you could actually have different controls for peaking when not ADS'd and ADS'd. I've just got set it so I don't have a button for peeking when non-ADS because it doesn't really matter too much to me. But if you did want to set something to peek whilst not ADSing, that's where that setting is. And then this one under aim is specifically for when you are aiming down sights. So that's everything for today. If you found the video helpful at all, then drop a like and a sub. And why not check out some of my other guides for Delta Force? I've got dozens already on YouTube covering tactics, weapons, operators, maps, keycards, Easter eggs, how to make money, and much, much more. Thanks so much for watching. My name's Ben. We are the Beard Guys, and I'll see you next time.